Hi everybody, so this session is specifically focusing on you guys in FAS201. There's a separate video tutorial that focuses on 202 with the same general idea of Milestone 2, the key elements and reminders for this assignment, since this is due this week in Module 5. So for those of you in 201, the key elements for Milestone 2, you've got your introduction, which basically and hopefully is pretty much complete since you've done your Milestone 1 assignment, which was to write that introduction. And within that introductory paragraph, you want to have a full identification of your two works of art, your visual and literary works of art. Refer to your rubric to make sure you've got all those required details in there, the title, artist, date, medium, all that information. And then by the end of that introductory paragraph, you want to have a clearly stated thesis statement that lets your reader know where this paper is headed, why you've chosen these two works of art, what their thematic connection is, what they have in common, as well as giving us a hint as to what you're going to be looking at later on in your paper when you bring it all into the present and make a contemporary connection. The second section of your Milestone 2 rough draft needs to include the historical background of your two main works of art. So in the bulk of your paper, the body of your paper, you're really going to be focusing on those two main works of art, your literary piece and your visual piece. So you want to talk about a link between the two. So even though they're from different time periods, from different styles, they aren't even in the same medium, what it is that they have in common as far as that theme that links them together. And you also want to look at each one individually and describe them to your reader and analyze them. So you want to discuss how they are products of their particular time and context. If you look back at some of the other video tutorials we've done up to this point where we talked about how to do a description or a formal analysis of a work of art and how to do a contextual analysis of it, that can sort of help you fill in the details here. And I always recommend in this section of looking at your works one at a time. So spending a good paragraph at least, maybe 2 paragraphs even, on each work of art by itself before trying to start kind of bouncing back and forth between the two. Because in your third section, you'll begin that comparison and contrast portion. So up to this point, you want to give your reader a really good, clear visual image and understanding of each work of art. So doing them one at a time in that second section is helpful. So by the time you get to your similarities and differences here, your reader has a good image of what these works of art are before you sort of start ping-ponging back and forth. So you want to look at the ways in which your two works of art reflect that theme in a similar way, what they have in common, as well as different ways they reflect that theme. And here you want to use examples. You really want to bring in specifics, whether it's visual details and elements from your work of art to show how that theme is reflected, or text excerpts from your literary piece. You really want to refer to specifics in your works as far as examples go, so you're not just sort of talking about them in a broad sense. You also want to think about how these similarities and differences here reflect the respective cultures in these two works of art. So again, you want to bring in examples of what was happening at the time that these works were created. What kind of things affected the way they were created? What affected their style? What might have influenced the artist who was creating these works? And how that added to that development of the theme that the two works share. Then you want to bring in your contemporary connection. So this is where you sort of bring it all into the present, and you want to think about how the two works of art you've looked at, maybe they've directly influenced a current work or image that you've chosen for that contemporary connection, or they might have indirectly affected it. But basically what you're doing here is thinking about how this theme is still alive today that you've been exploring in these two older works of art, how you can still see them in whatever that social construct or work of art is that you've selected for this portion of your paper. So how do the works continue to influence contemporary culture, and how can we see that same theme today? You want to think about how your two main works of art can serve as a kind of archetype for today, or how can they be seen as sort of typical examples of that theme when we look at that theme in the world around us today. So these are the main elements you have of Milestone 2. What you'll notice here is you don't have a final conclusion section or a conclusion paragraph that's due at this point. You can certainly give that a go and go ahead and start working on a conclusion here so that your instructor can give you some feedback on that as well. But the main thing you want to have at this point in your rough draft are these 4 key sections: your introduction, the historical background and look at your two works of art, then the comparison and contrast of those two works, and then bringing it all into the present as far as a contemporary connection goes. Some reminders. Make sure you bring in images, particularly for your visual work of art, good quality images that you can find in multiple viewpoints whenever they might be available. Follow MLA format, both for your overall paper, as far as spacing and margins and so forth go, as well as the specific research that goes into the body of your paper, the citations and the use of your scholarly resources. Use examples. I mentioned this before too in the body of your paper. You really want to be specific using visual and literary details from your works of art, as well as specific references to your research. So once you're in the body of your paper there, you really want to give your reader a good, clear sense of specifics and details, both from the works you're looking at as well as kind of showing off the research and knowledge you have of the material. In Module 5 this week in MindEdge, you will see an example of Milestone 2, which is a great helpful resource in there. It sort of walks you through the steps of those elements that I just went through and kind of helps you build your paper in a way. And then there's also a Milestone 2 example in there that you can look at. It's not necessarily a perfect example, but it is a helpful one to give you an idea of kind of what you're going for as far as your paper goes. And remember to review whatever feedback or comments your instructor gave you for your Milestone 1 assignment that you turned in back in week 3. You might want to even start there before you really begin developing your Milestone 2 fully. If there are any errors or mistakes or directions you need to change, you want to make sure you do that before you develop the full body of Milestone 2, of course. And as always, you can get feedback as you go. The SNU Online Writing Center is available to you through your academic support tab in your course menu. You can email your instructor to get feedback, ask questions, get clarification on any feedback you had from him or her. And then, of course, this week's discussion board is also focusing on everybody's Milestone 2 work, so you can kind of check out what others are doing in there and see what comments your instructor has in there as well.